In the gospel today, which is the gospel for the day, Jesus declares, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have come not to abolish, but to fulfill." Another translation of this passage has Jesus saying, "I have not come to abolish the law, but to bring out the real meaning and purpose of the law." So, what is supposed to be the real meaning and purpose of the law? The purpose of the law is to facilitate the expression and the concretization of our love, both our love of God and our love of neighbor. And when we read carefully the 10 Commandments, we realize that they can be summed up in one word, namely respect, or better yet, reverence. Reverence for God and for the name of God. Reverence for the day of the Lord. Respect for parents. Respect for life. Respect for personality. Respect for property. For the truth. For another person's good name. And respect for oneself, so that wrong desires may never master us, so that we do not covet what is not ours. These are the fundamental principles behind the 10 Commandments. Principles of reverence for God and respect for our fellow men and for ourselves, and indeed, love of God and neighbor. Without them, there can be no such thing as law, and on them all law is based. There are 3 types of behavior that run short of this ultimate goal of human law or moral conduct. The first one is pietism. Pietism corrupts religious behavior by making religion solely individualistic and otherworldly, rather than also social and practical. It is a refusal to sanctify the world. So, for example, Jesus talks about the typical Pharisee as self-righteous. And he tells that parable about the Pharisee and the tax collector. The Pharisee was proud and self-righteous, while the tax collector was humble and repentant. The Pharisee boasts before the Lord, "I perform all my religious activities. I am honorable. I fast twice a week. I am not adulterous like that tax collector. I am not dishonorable." We can talk about a contemporary example. A rich old lady who thinks that her only obligation is to save her soul by going to Mass every day, by reciting rosaries and novenas, by fasting and abstinence. And so focused is she only in fulfilling these religious observances. She wears her uniform, a different uniform for every day because she belongs to different organizations. But she forgets about charity, even to the people in her household. She doesn't pay them their just wages. And at one time, right after arriving home from the church, she scolds the servants and even becomes violent to them for forgetting that it is a Friday, a day of her fasting. And she scolds them, "How dare you forget that it's a Friday, you are endangering my soul, so throw away this meat that you have bought and buy me fish and vegetables." Another fault, another behavior that runs short of this ultimate goal of human moral conduct is moralism. Moralism keeps all the ritual trivialities of the moral law, but at the same time, ignoring the fundamental principle of love, for which the moral law exists. We know that the Church commands prayer, fasting, and abstinence, but these are not just impositions. but these are invitations to greater holiness, self-mortification, and charity. And we hear about these many times during the Lenten season. They are all interconnected. When we pray, we show our love for God and neighbor. We increase our love for God and neighbor. And we are invited to fast and abstain so we can discipline ourselves and train ourselves to avoid sin. But also, when we fast and abstain, we save something which we can then use to buy something for a needy person, at least for that day. So there is a practical and social dimension in our religion. It's not only a matter of saving our souls and then forgetting about our duties of justice and charity towards our neighbor. A third fault. So we have pietism, you have moralism, and then you have legalism. Closely related to moralism. It depends upon the minimalization of our obligation by invoking the letter of the law. It is formal obedience but material avoidance. So what do we mean by that? So it is opposed to the principle of maximization of obligation, which is inherent in the law of love. So for example, in the Ten Commandments, you know that these are mostly prohibitions. They are put in the negative: do not kill, do not commit adultery, do not lie, etc. But of course, we know very well that it's not enough to limit our conduct simply by avoiding all those things that are prohibited. So for example, you may not kill a person, but actually you are snobbish. You do not care about others. You are not generous. You are selfish. Yeah, it's true, you do not kill someone, but you fail to be generous. It may be true that you have not stolen anything from anybody, but is that enough to make you truly holy and good? That may be true that you are not a thief, but it may also be true that you have not yet really been generous and charitable. We may not have violated the 8th commandment. We may not have destroyed another person's reputation, but perhaps we still need to do many things in terms of encouraging others, sympathizing others, going out there and showing our love by supporting others. So in short, Jesus did not come to abolish the law, but to bring out the true meaning and purpose of the law. And the whole point, the whole purpose and meaning and the whole spirit of the law is to maximize our expression of our love for God and neighbors. So it's not only that we refrain from killing, but we show true love for other peoples. We become generous and helpful to them. It's not only that we refrain from stealing, but we also express generosity. If we are the lawmakers or the law enforcers in our own little context, in your classroom if you're a teacher, or at the home if you're a parent, remember, therefore, that laws are supposed to represent love and to facilitate the expression and concretization of love and caring. The law is supposed to support and regulate order, so that if there are times when you have to break the letter of the law, so that you can more profoundly fulfill the spirit behind the law, then by all means you make an exception. So you break the letter of the law, but make sure that in doing so, you fulfill the spirit and purpose of the law. I always give this example, like when you obey traffic laws all the time, but not during that time, exceptional time, when going through a green light, for example, means you have to run over a blind person crossing the street. Of course, you make an exception there. You break the letter of the law, you stop though it's green, because you want to protect life and show your love and respect and appreciation for life. So for all of us, we fulfill God's law and all just human laws that are in line with and ultimately derived from God's law, not just out of obligation, but as our love response to the God who has loved us first, and as our contribution to promoting order, peace, and love in our families and communities. We heard in our first reading a while ago that it was in Antioch that the disciples of the Lord were first called Christians. And I reflected that, was it because they were wearing a special uniform? Did the first Christians wear black or white or blue or red? So I don't think so. They were known because of the love that they had for one another. And it was that love, that heroic love. And in fact, the Acts of the Apostles would describe that there was really no poor or someone extra rich in that community, because whenever someone amongst them was in trouble, the others were always ready to go to the aid of that person. And all those pagans and Jews who were around them saw the great love that the Christians had. They show so much love and concern for one another. They were always ready to help one another. And so they were recognized as Christians because of their fidelity to the law of God and because of their genuine love for God and one another. It was in Antioch that they were first called Christians. So may we be recognized as Christians, not because of the uniforms we wear, but because of the love for God and neighbor that we show through our fidelity to the law of God.